10 things you absolutely must know about the Church of Scientology. Ladies and gentlemen, take notes because this is one of the craziest cults I have ever heard of. And I've been talking to ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, ex-Mormons. I've been looking into this stuff. I recently interviewed Mike Render. I've talked to Ron Miscavige, the father of David Miscavige, the Pope of Scientology. Watch, these 10 things are unbelievable. They strip away your rights and they consume everything about the person who becomes a member of this cult. We are Myth Vision. Welcome back to Myth Vision Podcast. I'm your host, Derek Lambert. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been doing some pretty intense stuff with the Scientology cult. You know, we had Mike Render on the other day, and we've talked to Ron Miscavige. I mean, he really delved into David Miscavige, his son, and told us the character, you know, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Well, today we talked to Jeffrey Augustine. Am I saying that correct, brother?
Yes, you are, Derek.
Welcome to you, my channel, you know, Myth Vision Podcast. I really can't wait to see what we talk about with these 10 things everyone must know about this cult called Scientology. And just the teaser you gave me on the phone last night, I was like, let's do it. Let's do it. So how do we start this out? Who are you? You know, what's your background? Why do you know 10 things that everyone should know?
Well, I'm a old guard Scientology critic. Been on started on Xenu.net in 2005. So I did a little bit of Scientology in the 80s, and it investigated it. You know, so I was on their mailing list forever, and a lot of things didn't add up. So I started becoming a critic. I just learned a lot about the human rights abuses in the 90s, especially with Lisa McPherson's death. And the more you go into it, the more sinister it becomes when you see it up close and personal. Okay, so I started on Xenu.net in 2005 as a critic, followed Anonymous. I was at all the street protests with Anonymous here in Los Angeles, and went through the departure of, you know, Mike Render and Tom DeVocht, my wife, Karen Carriere, all the prominent Scientologists who left around 2010, who were then called the independent Scientologists, but have since changed. So I've just been following it, and then I started blogging. My wife is Karen Carriere. She was a Class 12 C supervisor who trained on L Ron Hubbard's flagship, the Apollo, personally under Ron. So she reached the highest level you can reach as an auditor, Class 12 C supervisor. You know, you can't do better than that. And I did a podcast. I started around 2014. I interviewed a lot of people who were there. Some of them are no longer alive, to try to build an oral history of people who were actually there when L Ron Hubbard was in charge. And then when he died, how David Miscavige took over. And this was an interesting project for me. So I grew up in the Pentecostal church. And so knowing church, one thing you study is church history. So I've always been interested in the essence of what things really are. You know, what is a thing really? Not what the public relations say, but what is it really? And professionally, I'm a scientific lighting expert. I spent 30 years in lighting. So I worked on lasers, spectrophotometers, endoscopes, airplanes, all kinds of lighting. And I used my corporate skills. After my wife's son, Alexander Jensch, died, it's pretty brutal, very sadistic. They did not let my wife, Karen, kiss her dead son goodbye. He was 27 years old. And Karen was married to Heber Jensch, who for 40 years was the president of the Church of Scientology International. So when they didn't let Karen kiss her dead son goodbye, and it was negligent homicide, in my opinion. It was an international news story. I decided to use my corporate skills to really systematically dismantle Scientology in its present form, take it apart, show people what it really is, how it works. Because it can be very deceptive, and having a corporate background plus a religious background has helped me quite a bit. And people who are atheists don't always get the inflections of believers. And sometimes someone who has that background, and I'm not in the Pentecostal church anymore, I was just raised in it. And I went to a Christian university. So background in corporate, and then I studied formerly at Vedanta for 20 years. I was a practitioner. So I know Eastern religion. And so I have a pretty broad spectrum for people who are, my family going way back to the colonies, have been involved in Masons, in Freemasonry. So I'm a Freemason. And so I have a lot of things to bring contextually.
Broad background. And so I want everybody obviously to go check out your blog. You mentioned your blog. This is a big deal right here, ladies and gentlemen. If you're wanting to know some inside scoop on the Church of Scientology, the cult of Scientology, and its scandals, the things that it's really up to, I really recommend go down in the description. You guys can check out the blog. I mean, there's plenty to read, as you can see. And also go subscribe to his wife's YouTube channel. I really, really don't want to spoil anything because she's going to come on and share her story and talk about what's happened in hers. So stay tuned. I really look forward to Karen's take on everything. Make sure you go down in the description, subscribe, check that stuff out. And with that being said, now we can actually delve into, I think, 10 things people should or must know about the cult of Scientology. I don't even want to call it the church anymore. I just want to call it the cult because it's just
agreed. Yeah,
the damages that they've done.
It does. I want to just add one thing before we start. I was born in 1957, so I'm a Cold War baby boomer. By the time you get my age, you should have done a lot. You've been through a lot of bumps and bruises and mistakes and life experiences. So when I talk about my life experiences, they're broad because I'm older and I've just, as a function of age, done a lot of things. Made my mistakes, did things right, did things wrong, right? So when I started this blog in 2014, here's what I wanted to do. People say, why did you call it the Scientology Money Project? So I want to give some preface. One of the most important things back then people were asking, instead of where's Shelley, people were asking how much money does Scientology have? So in order to get front page of Google, you want uncontested search space. And nobody was really doing exactly what I was doing. So when I named it the Scientology Money Project, people were usually Googling Scientology and money. So part of the logic of it was to get Google search space. The subtitle is a dedicated news site investigating Scientology money, crime, lies, and legal matters. And that's what really interested me because I had seen Scientology money. I found $1.7 billion in obscure IRS tax forms called 1099s. And I knew about Scientology crime, lies, and legal matters. So out of this, here's how you start investigating anything. You start with really simple, what is it? So what is the Church of Scientology? And what I learned, the first thing you learn when you dig into their corporate filings is the Church of Scientology doesn't have any members. And this is fairly common. And what that means is it's a non-membership corporation. And there's many corporations that don't have members. They have a board of trustees and directors, but they don't have any members. So it's a non-membership corporation. It's called the Church of Scientology International, CSI. And all it really is a non-membership corporation, and it licenses churches under it. So the Church of Scientology Los Angeles, Church of Scientology New York, whatever city you're in, plus all the social, their front groups, WISE, ABLE, things like that. So it's really a franchise organization. And so that's what it is. So it licenses it. It doesn't have members. Now, the other thing I wanted to bring up that's really interesting, people can go to my blog, and in the header, I have an article called Why the Sea Org Doesn't Actually Exist. So that's the first thing, is the Church of Scientology has no members. You can't join the Church of Scientology. You can't join it. If you went and gave them $1 million, you couldn't become a member of the Church of Scientology International. So we're going to leave that and get back to it, okay?
Yeah, I'm wondering, how does that work? Because these people, like my granddad and other people, act like they're part of this church, but if they're not members, yeah, can't we?
Okay, now, so the second thing you should know, the Sea Org doesn't actually exist. So you see Sea Org members, and Mike Rinder was in the Sea Org, and Leah was in the Sea Org, my wife Karen was in the Sea Org. But the Church of Scientology in 1992, in its application for tax exemption, told the IRS, technically, there is no single entity known as the Church of Scientology. So it doesn't exist. They say, but for convenience, we sometimes refer to the Scientology International ecclesiastical hierarchy of churches, which just means all the franchise Scientology churches as the Church of Scientology, okay? So now it gets more interesting because the Sea Org runs the Church of Scientology, which has no members, right? And in a famous 2014 case where Monique Rathbun sued David Miscavige and others down in Texas, David Miscavige's lawyer wrote the following. Plaintiff asserts that Mr. Miscavige exercised control over the church because he leads the Sea organization. But his lawyer went on to say, the Sea Org has no constitution, charter, or bylaws, no formal or informal ecclesiastical, corporate, or other management structure. Now get this, Derek. He went on to say it has no directors, officers, managing agents, or other executives, no employees, staff members or volunteers, no income, no disbursements, no bank accounts or other assets, no liabilities, no stationery, no office, home, address, or telephone number. It does not create or maintain any financial, personnel, or other records. It can neither give nor receive orders because it has no one to either give or receive them or to carry them out. It cannot be sued, or it cannot sue or be sued. So if you follow that, the Sea Org doesn't legally exist according to David Miscavige's own lawyer. It doesn't exist. You can't take an envelope and write the Sea Org. You can't email it. It doesn't have a building or a location in space. So you're asking, well, what are we dealing with?
Exactly. That's what I'm beginning to ask in my own head. What the hell is going on? Because on paper, legally, according to what you're saying, is, hey, no. And in reality, though, it's a different picture. Everyone who's coming out is saying this is something here. This is legit. There's a real movement. There's concrete evidence. Anyway, yeah.
Well, you know, when you deal with Scientology, you have to deal with two things: surreality. You have to accept that Scientology is very surreal, and there's also, to put it in plain English, there's a lot of fuckery, a lot of deceptive stuff. So in order to explain the Sea Org, I use an analogy, and it may not be the best analogy, but it's an analogy, okay? When you become a Christian, you accept Jesus Christ into your heart as your Lord and Savior, okay? Right. Now, the fact that you've accepted Jesus, does that have any legal standing anywhere? Can you go on and say, hey, I accepted Jesus, I want a bank account?
No.
Can you buy property or transact because you've made a pledge? Nope. So it's in the same way, the Sea Org is just a pledge you make to serve Scientology for 1 billion years. It's a pledge. It doesn't mean anything legally. It's just a pledge. But in order to sign a staff contract with a sub-licensed Church of Scientology, you have to sign the pledge. And that's really no different. If you're going to be a pastor of a Christian church, you have to have accepted Jesus, right? You have to make the pledge. So it's really just a pledge. And even though they have uniforms and they have recruiting posters, in what they told the IRS, the Sea Org doesn't exist. They call it a religious order, and but in reality, and we'll get to it later, in reality, it doesn't exist. And the Church of Scientology has no members. So right now we're going to get you there on how you become a Scientologist and actually get on the meter, and get sessions and do all that. And this is a deliberately designed path. It was designed by lawyers. and we'll see the reasons why it was designed the way it is. It's an interesting, in 1989 court case in U.S. tax court, a judge called the Sea Org a deceptus visus, which means to fool the eye, and said it was in the nature of a clan. The judge actually called it something akin to a clan.
Wow.
And you know, a lot of that, for years and years, decades, the mafia couldn't be brought down because it didn't exist. Prosecutors couldn't prove that La Cosa Nostra existed in America because it didn't exist. It didn't have legal form. Nobody had incorporated La Cosa Nostra. In Sicily, it's the mafia. In America, it's Cosa Nostra, technically. When we're talking about organized crime, and we're going to get more into that with Scientology. So mobsters would never incorporate the Cosa Nostra because they would get caught and they would get sued. So there's a logic for not incorporating the Sea Org. There's a certain deniability because you can't sue a pledge. If you tell me you've accepted Christ, I can't sue that. It doesn't have any, it has no assets. There's nobody there. Okay, now, so where do Scientologists fit in? This is the third thing. What is a Scientologist? Because, you know, when I used to do business, one of the corporations I worked for was Philips, the Dutch, you know, multinational. And when I worked for Philips for 10 years as a regional manager, if you want to do business with us, we had to know who you were. You know, where are you located? Are you a real company? You know, and there were other things I had to do to qualify you, right? So when we say, what is a Scientologist? We're going to say, well, let's look at it legally. The church's public relation answer is that a Scientologist is anyone who reads, studies, and applies the teachings of L Ron Hubbard. And that's correct after a fashion, but legally that still won't get you there. So what the Church of Scientology did in 1984, there was in that era, there was a court case, Lawrence Willersheim versus the old Church of Scientology, California. And L Ron Hubbard had put everything into the Church of Scientology, California. It was the old corporation, all the money, all the trademarks, all the intellectual property. And if Willersheim had won his case, he could have taken all the assets of the Church of Scientology. He could have bankrupted them, or the IRS could have, or the federal government. So the old corporate structure had to be changed. And when Hubbard was alive, he ordered this sort out. So one of the things that came out of was called the International Association of Scientologists, the IAS. And the IAS is the official membership organization of the Church of Scientology International. Mm. So it's like here in America, we have a store called Costco. You know, it's a chain of stores. And everyone goes to Costco, and you never leave without spending a few $100s, right? You can buy everything from tires to bulk things of spaghetti sauce. I mean, you know, so Costco. Now, can you go into Costco without having a membership card?
They always tell me no.
No, you can't. Now, they might let you in, you know, on a one-time with a pass, and you got to pay for it. But basically, in order for you, Derek, at Myth Vision, you're a big guy out here you're a big deal out here on the internet with your podcast, right? But at Costco, you're nobody. It's like, Derek, who cares? You have to have the Costco membership card. So the International Association of Scientologists, you have to have that membership card to be in the official membership organization of the church. So that's where Scientologists belong, is in the IAS. And the IAS is the group that gives out, you know, what we call the bowling trophies.
Yeah. So
these glorified bowling trophies you see in the IAS magazine. So the IAS was created to protect, defend, disseminate the Scientology religion. But here's the thing, why the IAS is so important. Under American law, if I'm a church, let's say I'm the First Baptist Church of Anaheim, and I raise money for our building, you know, our new church building, I can only spend money on the new church building legally. I'm not allowed to spend it on anything else. That's against the tax code, and I could lose my standing, right? And that's really going back to the old PTL days with Jim and Tammy Baker. Among tax fraud and some other stuff, Jim Baker got in trouble for raising money for one thing and spending it on another. It's against the law. So the IES raises money for very general purposes: protection, defense, dissemination of the Scientology religion, and that allows it to spend its money on. It could pay for the Free Winds, which it funded part of the initial Free Winds acquisition of their ship. It can pay for private investigators, fair game, stalking, harassment. It can pay for all kinds of malicious things. It can pay for part of the television studio they have, Scientology TV. So because it's created to be broad-based, it's allowed to spend money on anything. But here's the important thing, Derek. The IS is legally separate from the Church of Scientology International, completely separate legally. So if you sue the church, you cannot go after the $1.5 billion plus in cash the IS is holding. Can't touch it. It's a different corporation. So that's part of it. Okay, so you decided you want to, they get you in and you decided, hey, I want to be a Scientologist, okay? Why in 2021 you would make that decision, I don't know. Desperation. I don't know. Maybe you see something in it. I don't get it. But anyway, so you decided. So now you made the decision to accept L Ron Hubbard into your heart, so to speak, right?
I love this. I love this.
Hey, look, I grew up in American Pentecostalism, and
right.
So
hallelujah. No, I'm just kidding.
if you can't have some fun with it,
Right. I love that.
Now the next thing, you've joined the IES, right? And you paid for your lifetime membership. Initially, when you join, they'll give you a free 6-month membership, but that's done for a certain reason, which we'll get to. But the important thing is they have to get you into their membership organization. Okay. Otherwise, you don't get anything. So now that you've joined the IES, what are your next steps to become an actual card-holding, Scientologist and to get some auditing? Because people think you can walk into a Scientology church and give them $50,000 and get auditing. It's like, no, sorry, Derek, we're not ready yet. We have some more paperwork. Before we can put you on the meter, there's some more paperwork here. Okay, so this is on my blog, on the header. I'm looking at it here on my other screen, here in my war room. I have up in the banner the 4 evil Scientology contracts. So, Derek, we needed you to sign. You know what's funny is all these used car guys, and they're trained to never call a contract a contract. Like, sign the contract, press hard. Right. There's 10 copies, right? You're always taught, so it's like, here, Derek, sign the contract. Don't read it, just sign it, right? You're going to go, hey, a contract. Oh, they say, we just have some paperwork to approve. If you'll just approve the paperwork, we can get you in your new car and off the lot. So we have some paperwork for you to be a Scientologist, Derek.
Does this help any? Hold on, let me switch you up.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Please put you up here. Oops.
Okay.
Trying to get it to where it's just you.
Yeah, see that?
Bring you up. Let's do this.
Okay. Do you see now that header?
I don't know why I can't get you.
Okay. Okay. It's how Scientology ensnares the unsuspecting in a series of binding contracts, and you can see the piece of cheese.
Yep.
In the mouse trap. Oh, you are walking into a trap. This gets into American First Amendment, and this is really crucial to understand the intake system of the Church of Scientology. Okay, what they're going to have you do is something seemingly innocuous. They have you watch a film called Orientation. And Orientation is a film where the narrator walks you around Scientology and shows you like the bookstore, the auditing rooms. You get to see different people in the church. and it shows you that it's a church and it does church things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you sign that you've seen the film, the contract's called Attestation of Religious Belief Regarding the Scientology religious film called Orientation. And you sign a contract saying that you've seen the film and that you agree that Scientology is a religion. Now that allows the Church of Scientology to take you behind First Amendment. You've agreed that it's a religion. And in America, what's important to realize is you're free. You have consent to join a religion. And once you agree to join a religion, you give your consent to be governed by their ecclesiastical rules and laws. So the first step in Scientology, stripping you of your legal and civil rights, is to get you to agree that they're a religion. Now, the next step before we can get you into session, Mr. Lambert, if that's your real name, and you haven't been sent in to spy on us, and they will check you on this stuff.
Right.
But let's get you to sign the second agreement called Religious Services Enrollment Application Agreement and General Release. Like, general release? I've got to release. Wait, I'm supposed to be about freedom, but I've got to release. I have to sign a release to do Scientology? Yes, you do. Basically, this contract, you agree to abandon, surrender, waive, and relinquish your rights. You're not going to sue the church in court, in a court of law. So you agree not to sue them. You agree to not let your heirs, estate, anyone acting on your behalf sue the church. So you release them from all liability that could happen, may happen, might happen. And I'll give you an example. Derek, you know, if you're walking into a public building and you slip and fall on the icy stairs and break your knee, right?
Yes.
Okay, they have insurance to pay for your broken knee because of their negligence and not shoveling the ice and snow, right?
Mm-hmm.
In Scientology, you release them from that. If you slipped and fell in Scientology premises or got hurt or something fell on you, maybe a bust of L Ron Hubbard fell on you and broke your shoulder, you have to release them. You agree to release them from anything and everything up to and including your death if that happens. So this is like a nuclear contract. You will not sue us. You will submit to binding arbitration. And we're seeing that in the case of Danny Masterson's victims in the civil case. The church is forcing them into arbitration. So be careful, because this contract has real teeth. You agree to go to arbitration. And arbitration began as a business thing to kind of free up the courts. So Scientology is an unholy fusion of American First Amendment protections and American secular contract law. So this is a dangerous contract, but you have to sign that. The next contract, when you get on the Scientology e-meter and give up all your secrets, crimes, sins, overts, you know, all the dirty stuff you've done, or on the e-meter, Scientology records all that. They write it down. The auditor will write it down. And so if you were in session, they would write down whatever. Derek, when he was 12 years old, did this and this and stole this and lied about this to his mom and, you know, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And then when he was 18, he was masturbating to porn, blah, blah. Yeah, they write all that down, but it's also videotaped. So everything you've admitted to, and not that anyone watches porn, you know, or anything. I'm not saying that. You know, but people might tell a lie or something to their grandma. But no, they get down to the serious stuff and they're recording it. Now, the third contract is your agreement regarding confidential religious files. You don't have any right to look at them. You don't own them. You give Scientology sole possession of them forever. And it's phenomenal. They own all your personal history. And when you go into Scientology, you fill out a personal history inventory, you get security checked, but they own all that and you have no right to know what's in there. And if they make notations about you, like Derek has suppressive tendencies, we think he might be part of, you know, he might be a whole track criminal or what. They have all this language. You don't get to see any of that. So if you sue, you can't get your folders back. Now, Laura DiCrescenzo was able to overcome that in court. because over 100 people have access to these so-called secret folders. And there's a story that's, that David Miscavige used to bring in the pre-clear folders, these confidential religious folders of celebrities, and read them at night in the lounge at the international base to his fellow SEERG executives. And the people who were there have testified about this. So he would say, oh, look, we have a Scientology celebrity who did this. And can you believe this one? Oh, get a load of this, Derek. This so-called celebrity was, and then, they would all drink scotch and chuckle about it. So your secrets are not kept secret within the church, but you sign away all your rights to the folders. Now, the fourth and final contract, and this will blow your mind. It's innocuously called Agreement and General Assistance Regarding Spiritual Assistance. Well, you want spiritual assistance, but if you remember the Lisa McPherson case.
Yes. Okay.
Lisa had a psychotic episode. She was in a car in Clearwater, minor traffic accident, like a fender bender. She gets out of the car, strips naked on the street, and she's saying that she needs help, right? She's gone psychotic. Now, she had signed this contract. So paramedics, police come, they transport her to the local hospital, and they're going to put her in a 72-hour psychiatric evaluation, right? Which is called the Baker Act in Florida. Here in California, it's called the 5150. But generally, to protect the public, if you have a psychotic incident, they'll lock you up for 72 hours to evaluate you so that you're safe, you don't kill yourself, and you don't harm anyone else. That's just the law. This contract you sign says, I don't believe in psychiatry as a matter of my religious beliefs. And if I'm ever taken into custody, I expect members of my religion to come and take me out because I don't believe in psychiatry or its labels. So this gives them the right to take you out of a psychiatric setting, to lock you in a hotel room on their premises, and subject you to a process called the introspection rundown. And that's what they did to Lisa McPherson. So they can lock you up for as long as they want at their sole discretion. And this works by not talking to you. They pass notes under the door and you have to fill in. So I call it the kidnap contract because that's what it amounts to, a legal form of kidnapping you.
Even when you're incapacitated, they have the legal right over you, even beyond your own volition. I know I want to go see the psychiatrist. No, you signed this, and they have the right to try and steer you back onto the path, even forcefully, coercively.
Yeah, they do. They do. And what's interesting within the larger context of First Amendment religious protections in America, religions can get away with murder in America. They really can. They can get away with, they get away with virtually anything because the courts can't intrude into religious law. That's why a lot of Muslims want Sharia law. And then there's, the Jews have their own type of courts. And so this is part of religious law in America. So the larger context, Scientology weaves itself. That's why they want to be a religion, and they need to be a religion so they can do this.
Right.
Other religions, to my knowledge, don't kidnap people, lock them up. And Lisa died tragically, after being in captivity, and she lost a great deal of weight. Church spent over $100 million defending against a negligent homicide case and being criminally charged. But you sign these 4 contracts and you see that. So what is a Scientologist? Well, you've signed the 4 contracts. You belong to their membership association. But in doing so, a Scientologist has signed away his or her legal rights and civil rights. You can't sue. They can lock you up. So even hypothetically, let's say you want to do something that's destructive to the church, they could exercise the introspection rundown contract and lock you up to cool you down. And so you can see that they strip you of these rights. Now, in science, this would be an imbalanced equation. They have all the power and you have none. So that's what a Scientologist is a person who belongs to a membership group and has signed away all their rights to sue the church or to seek redress for any damage, harm, up to, as the contracts state, up to and including death.
Really?
Yeah, up to and including death. And yeah, if you die on a Scientology, let's say you're doing the purification rundown and they overrun you on mega doses of niacin and you have liver failure and go into cardiac arrest and die, you agree to hold them harmless up to including death. So that's how intense it is.
In these 4 contracts, you sold your soul pretty much.
Yeah, you gave away your rights. And look, it's on my blog, the 4 evil Scientology contracts on the Scientology Money Project. You can go there and read them for yourself. I put excerpts in, but you can download them in PDF form. So go read them I invite your viewers to go read them. You will be shocked at the contents and what the church is contemplating. We must strip our members of all their legal rights. So once they strip you of your legal rights, you're then ready to go into session. Now there's another little sec check they do called A to J. And this happened to me, Derek, when I first joined. I did this, this personality test. Like, do you look at train timetables? Do you, so the Oxford Capacity Analysis, they call it, the OCA. It has nothing to do with Oxford University, but it sounds impressive.
Yeah.
You just need to take the Oxford Capacity Analysis. It's an IQ and personality test. So it sounds good on the sales pitch, but it's bullshit. I did my OCA when I was waiting for it to be processed and analyzed. And, I was a young guy, I was 22 or something, 23. It was a long time ago. While I was waiting around for it to be analyzed and processed by their scientists, I guess.
Their Oxford Scientific Collaborative. No, I'm just kidding.
They're nuclear physicists and such.
With high school diplomas, add to that,
or maybe Oxford,
Oxford diplomas, yeah.
Oxford, Hubbard had a nuclear physics doctorate, for Christ's sake.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, so I'm waiting around, and but I have to go in, and this was right after an event in the church called the Mission Holder Massacre, where they got rid of all their mission holders. Okay, so franchisees. So I get a sec check. I go in, and I'm on a meter. I'm holding the Kansas City meter, and these 3 guys are sec checking me. And the church is really paranoid, right? Now, at the time when I left university, I graduated with a degree in English literature. My minor is biblical studies, and this was during the Carter recession, which was crushing, just crushing. The economy was very bad. Interest rates were high. And I'm not comparing myself then to people now, because it's a lot harder now for young people. But I wound up getting a job at Hughes Aircraft, which was owned by Howard Hughes, or the Hughes Medical Trust at the time. And it was a black ops, they did a lot of black projects. So I worked as a technical writer on teams that wrote technical manuals for radars and missiles. That meant that I had security clearances. Now, to get security clearances in the Cold War, I had to get polygraphed by the Department of Defense and the FBI. And back then, they would ask you questions. Are you a communist? No. And this is unlighted, the polygraph. Are you a homosexual? Well, the reason they asked back then is because if you were a homosexual back then, you could be blackmailed. It's not like it was today. There were no social freedoms. It was homosexuals were viewed as mentally ill. And Hubbard even says that in his writings.
Wow.
That they're ill, they're mentally ill. And that's as
dated as having, what was he saying, C-17 spacecrafts that were flying for 75 billion years ago? Like, it's almost funny because in a couple hundred years, we're probably going to have crafts that don't even look similar to what we have now. And he's, got like spaceships that look like aircraft that we used in the 60s and the 70s.
Yeah, it was a DC-8.
Yeah,
he said that he said Xenu's DC-8s, they didn't have jet engines on them, obviously, because they're in space. And that's kind of funny as an aside. just the orbital mechanics, you couldn't get a DC-8 to re-enter, you know, at 18,000. You couldn't even get it. Escape velocities around 18,000 miles an hour. And I'm talking to Americans, for all the scientists out there, I'm not going in meters. A DC-8 airframe, the wings would rip off at around 700 miles an hour. It couldn't get escape velocity at 18,000. It couldn't re-enter that kind of big thing. Anyway, so yeah, it's like me talking about biplanes or something, or, you know. So anyway, I was getting sex checked. Are you a communist? Are you homosexual? Have you ever traveled to Moscow? Do you have friends who are communists? And they ask you, because they want to make sure and I was a squeaky clean church boy, you know. So I got my security clearances. I wasn't a communist, etc. So, but in Scientology, L Ron Hubbard doesn't want people joining the church who are police officers, law enforcement, connected to intelligence, journalists, have security clearances, or are related to those kind of people. Did you know that? He doesn't want any kind of law enforcement, intelligence, or, you know, he doesn't want those kind of people in the church.
I mean, yeah, it doesn't surprise me, but yeah.
Yeah, they're called illegal pre-clears. Well, because they could be damaging to the church. In a law enforcement type, it's the criminality that goes on. So he has a culling mechanism. And even people signing these contracts, it's kind of a culling mechanism. So I had a security check, and it was kind of funny because I didn't know that much. And they asked me, like, for example, do you have any evil thoughts or purposes toward L Ron Hubbard? Like, no, I don't know. No, I don't have any. It was just a weird question. And they said, do you have any evil thoughts or purposes toward Mary Sue Hubbard? I said, who's Mary Sue Hubbard? They said, it's the Commodore's wife. I said, who's the Commodore? L Ron Hubbard. I go, how is he a Commodore? He's the Commodore of the Sea Org. I go, what's the Sea Org? Because I just didn't know how it worked, right? But anyway, I got through this long grinding sec check. Now, the reason I mentioned the security check is going through the polygraphs for my security clearances. I recognized immediately by the questions they were asking that there was a sophisticated security apparatus at work in the Church of Scientology. I knew it. I knew, based on having gotten polygraphed by the US government and the FBI, that they had the same thing going on. There was an intelligence apparatus, and that really was scary, a sophisticated intelligence apparatus. And they did also ask in Scientology sec checks if you were a communist. Because Hubbard had a real thing about hating communists. And that came out of 1950s America, you know, where that was the worst thing to be, was a communist. So I got through those sec checks, and that's what they'll do if you join now. You're going to get sec checked. And they're really afraid, especially, you know, you've seen on the internet, a lot of these younger people have a lot of fun with going in, you know, and joining the church, and they have hidden videos. And the church doesn't think it's funny. I think it's amusing. They don't understand the concept of, you know, humor. Hubbard wrote a policy called joking and degrading. He said people who engage in joking and degrading are low-tone suppressives, you know.
Yeah.
So they'll rip your sense of humor completely out of you. Just rip it out. They don't like. Scientology is not funny. It's not funny. Hubbard said Scientology is a deadly serious activity. So Derek, we're dealing with something deadly serious.
Yeah.
It's out to save. The fate of Earth hangs in the balance. Hubbard wrote, the fate of every man, woman, and child, you know, the agonized fate of every man, woman, and child depends on us in Scientology. Like, wow, we got to save the planet. Okay, so once you get through all that sec checking and contracts, now you're ready to go into session. Okay? Because you've been approved and vetted, and they have done everything except a proctological exam on you. And now I'm going to change gears here.
Okay.
Because the other question I get asked after all this, it's like, who actually owns Scientology? Who owns it? And that's a really great question. Like, who owns all this stuff? Well, the answer is easy. Scientology consists of intellectual property. That's really what it comes down to. Trademarks and the copyrighted works of L Ron Hubbard. So they have their logos and symbols, their service marks, their trademarks, and their auditing processes. That's all copyrighted material. And so whoever controls and owns the copyrights owns and effectively controls Scientology. One guess. Who do you think owns it all, controls it all? Initials or DM?
Oh, David Miscavige. Interesting.
Yeah, you are correct, because above the Church of Scientology International, there's a body called the Religious Technology Center, or RTC. David Miscavige is chairman of the board, Religious Technology Center. They own and control all of the copyrights and trademarks of the Church of Scientology religion. So RTC licenses the Church of Scientology International, which in turn sublicenses. And then all the licensees pay money to use the licenses, and the money goes up, and Church of Scientology International takes a cut, RTC takes a cut. A related body is called the Church of Spiritual Technology. And these are the people, the secret vaults, the nuclear-proof vaults where Hubbard's works are stored on stainless steel records and platinum vaults. And David Miscavige said, so that no matter even what happens, if a madman presses a button and there's thermonuclear Armageddon, the tech will still be around. Church of Spiritual Technology owns some rights, but they're controlled by Religious Technology Center. So who actually owns Scientology is David Miscavige. And he owns it in the sense that he controls all the intellectual property. And that's how it works. And that would be like if you owned a Microsoft owns its intellectual property. So whoever controls Microsoft basically owns and controls Microsoft, right? Right. Same thing. So it's just business. So David Miscavige owns and controls the Church of Scientology, and he is the highest ranking Sea Org member. And even if they say it doesn't exist, it does. When you join the Sea Org, you're making a pledge, but then you sign a staff contract with some part of the church, whether it's Religious Technology Center, Church of Scientology International, Church of Scientology of Tampa, Tampa Bay Org. So you sign staff contracts. That's how you have legal standing within the church as a Sea Org member. Right. So it's just a franchise system. So if you join, and they don't call their churches, they call them orgs for organizations. So the Tampa org, let's say, if you have a service there, you sign as a public member, you pay the Tampa org, which is licensed, and you, the public member, you go in and you meet a Sea Org member within a building owned by the church. So the Sea Org member gives you your auditing, and then you leave, you go your way, Sea Org member goes their way, the money goes up that way. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. You just have a franchise system with Sea Org members delivering and making the money for the church. Public members making donations to the IAS. And interesting. The question, why is Church of Scientology so obsessed with money? Because it's all about money. I don't know if you've ever had the unfortunate experience of being in a hospital. You look young and healthy. Maybe you haven't. I had to go to hospital.
Very few times. Yeah.
Well, I had to go in for years ago. I was hospitalized, and the thing about the hospital is they bill everything. So they bill everything. You got these billing codes. So you get the nurse comes in, it's billed. If you have an IV, it's billed. All your medicines are billed.
$100 Tylenol, it's billed. Yeah.
Yeah, when you check out, you have this big long sheet of all your billing codes. So they bill anything that's touched, you get billed. And it's kind of like that in hotels. Nice hotels. Like if you've gone to a nice hotel pre-pandemic, so you watch a movie, you have room service, you do this, you go to the health club, it's all billed, right? Scientology bills for everything, every step of the way. And they look for money. The International Association of Scientologists, they want to get free money because it's so much easier to just take free money. On the church side, they give you auditing, which takes a lot of work. There's a lot of people involved in it, delivering an auditing session. There's a lot of people behind the scenes. So on the IAS side, they just take cash and they give you a trophy and you get your picture taken in their magazine. So it's much easier to take free money and not deliver auditing. So they're obsessed with money because here's the secret. Scientology, at its root, is a master race organization or group. L Ron Hubbard said that Scientologists ceased to be Homo sapiens, and they became a new race of man called Homo Scientologicus, or Homo novus. Homo novus, the new man, Hubbard considered to be vastly superior to Homo sapiens. In fact, we're derisively called Homo saps by Scientologists. Non-Scientologists are called wogs. That's like their derogatory term. You're a wog, you're a Homo sap, you're a hypnotized zombie, you're dead in the head. And the master race of Homo novus, the high-level purpose of Scientology is to take over the world. The purpose of the Sea Org is to put in Scientology ethics on the planet, to bring hostile governments into compliance with Scientology. L Ron Hubbard said, someday somebody will say this is legal, make sure it's Scientology. So as a master race group of super beings, clears and OTs, their goal is to control the world and to impose Scientology upon the world.
And they know that money will do it.
Money buys power.
Yeah. Absolutely,
money buys power, it buys influence with elected officials, police officers. And I did a story on a dirty Colombian police general, Mina Bravo, who got very involved with Scientology along with Colonel Prado, who worked for him. I have that on my blog. I'm about to break the story of another dirty Peruvian police general and how they infiltrate police departments all over the world, including the city of London. In the 2000s, they used Tom Cruise to infiltrate the police department in the city of London. And so money buys influence, power. It also buys private investigators. It pays for legal settlements. And one of the ugly parts of corporate life is sometimes you get sued as a corporation, right? That just happens. And sometimes you pay a settlement because you don't want your PR damaged. Let's say you're a manufacturer of something, and it's easier to pay a settlement, a confidential settlement. And in corporate, they call that "fuck you" money. They really do. They're derisive. Like, our electric car caught on fire and burned up and almost killed you, but we'll give you $1 million if you'll sign this and go away and not publicize it. Well, most people would say, yeah, okay, I don't want a war on the internet with the electric car company, so I'll take your $1 million and shut up. And they sign a non-disclosure agreement. Now, the big electric car company has the money to make that happen. They just write it off. It's fuck you money, right? So Scientology can make legal problems go away, either through intimidation, fear, threat, or payoffs. And in the civil case of Lisa McPherson, they went all the way to the courtroom steps, and they know they did not want to go in a courtroom, so they paid a big settlement to the estate. So money is power. So this master race knows it has to bring in as much money as possible to protect itself and defend off threats. That's why money is so important, because money is power in this world. Now, having said that, in modern culture, we're realizing that money translates to social media power. That's really what you're after, is social media power. You want to be Google, Facebook, Twitter. They have a lot of power, way out of proportion to their actual money, which is incredible, right? What Scientology didn't get, because it was designed in a pre-internet era by L Ron Hubbard, was that social media is a lot more important. Messaging, content, free conversation like we're having. Right now, we're not paying any money to do what we're doing, Derek. It's not costing us anything. I mean, it's cost a little bit, right? You got some nice equipment there in your studio. And so But we have free speech, which their money and their master race philosophy and fair game cannot overcome. You know, I have hate pages up on me, but that's part of the price of doing business. And you know, I put my blog up as my response. So when they attack me, they never mention Jeffrey Augustine is a suppressive person. He's horrible because of all these foregoing reasons, blah, blah, blah. But they'll never say, and go read his blog. So part of the power we have as activists, Derek, is to use the power of the internet, podcasts, blogs, videos, to go up against a $3 billion cult and to demand justice for their victims. To ask our government to revoke their income tax exemption because they are a transnational criminal organization operating as religion. And that could be another episode. You know, I've been covering a Ponzi scheme in New York City. It's called GPB Capital Holdings. It's owned by a Scientologist named David Gentile, and it's $1.8 billion Ponzi scheme. David Gentile was just arrested in February by the FBI after about a 2-year investigation. It goes longer than that, but he was raided 2 years ago. He and his criminal cohorts were arrested. And then I'm following dirty Colombian money. I have found $140 million coming out of Iraq. So that's another podcast, the transnational criminal. But what bothers me is Scientology has such a tolerance inside the church for white collar criminality. You know, ABC Mouse, that Age of Learning for kids, that's owned by a Scientologist named Doug Doring. His son is the actor, whose name I don't recall. Anyway.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I do want one question before we get to the next the next question real quick. And I think this is a yes, and I'm going to be bold when I say this. Do you think David Miscavige actually believes, I guess it's kind of like his own ideology? Like, is this guy just a money-hungry, lying fake? Or do you think this guy believes his own Kool-Aid that he's creating? You know, does he really think he's superior in a real sense? Kind of like when you study about Aryan, white racist Aryans who really believe their ideology that somehow they're descended from gods and everyone else is an animal, but somehow the white race is beyond, which is, of course, ridiculous. But nonetheless, they believe this ideology. Do you think he believes in this ideology, or is this a power money thing for him only? Do you think he actually believes in this stuff as well as what's pushing him to keep doing this?
I don't think it's an either or question. I'll break it out a couple different ways to answer you. First of all, any religious leader, whether it's the Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh, L Ron Hubbard, Mary Baker Eddy, you go down the list. Their fundamental view of too many religious leaders is that I am the religious leader, I believe it, and the rules don't apply to me. Mm-hmm. When you get to a certain level of power, you're creating the religion. You're saying what the law is. So I think his position is that, yes, I'm a Scientologist, but the rules don't apply to me. So fuck you.
Right.
2, he does believe he is the second most important being in the world. L Ron Hubbard or Tom Cruise once said to Katie Holmes, "You don't understand, Katie. There's L Ron Hubbard, David Miscavige, and me. They do think they're master race beings. They do think that they are cosmically important in this fight against psychiatry, who they consider to be going back billions and trillions of years, what they call the whole track." So I think David Miscavige believes it to a certain extent, that he is the leader of Scientology.
You just made me think of that weird video on YouTube where Tom Cruise has that little Mission Impossible tune, ding, 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 ding,
yeah.
ding, and he's like, well, if we don't do it, no one will.
I do what I can, and I do it the way I do everything. There's nothing part of the way for me. It's just...
Because only I can help. Like, that makes me think what he was saying behind that whole thing is exactly the ideology of I am superior and this world needs me. I'm like, dude, that's so freaking crazy.
Well, that's exactly it. And so many people I know in the Sea Org who worked with David Miscavige said that Tom Cruise was in the valence of, which means acting in the character of or acting like David Miscavige, that he was being a clone of David Miscavige when he was saying that. No, you don't understand. Only Scientologists can help with the scene of accident, or with Matt Lauer. Matt, you're being glib. You don't understand the history of psychiatry. I do. So yes, I think David Miscavige thinks he's a super being, but he also doesn't have to follow the rules that apply to everyone else in Scientology.
Jeez.
So he has it both ways, where it's convenient for him to be a Scientologist, especially where there's a court case and argue that he's an ecclesiastical leader. But you're also dealing with Miscavige as a raging narcissist. This Colombian police general, after he retired, gave him a medal in Barbados. And the medal wasn't just for being a good guy. The medal was given for saving humanity from crime, violence, drugs, terrorism, all the other things that beset it. And it's like, I mean, I could see getting a medal for being like humanitarian, right? But giving yourself a medal from some Colombian police general who's retired, who's just criminally charged, by the way, for saving humanity. Now look at that, Derek. Who gives himself a medal for saving humanity? Talk about delusions of grandeur. Like it's like the Nobel Prize is not even for saving humanity. It's for contributing to science, literature, world peace, things like that. But for David Miscavige to arrange this thing, and he had the free winds behind him, the ship, and all the crew lined up. So you have to, it's a complex question. On some levels, I think he sees it as absolute bullshit. Other things, he's the most important being in the world. John Peeler, who was a member of the Sea Org, once said to me one of the most insightful things I've ever heard. John Peeler said, and he worked around David Miscavige, he said, Scientology is whatever David Miscavige says it is on any given day. And that is the most brilliant thing. Because one day Miscavige can have something be so important, and the next day he could just flip to something else being important. So it's whatever the hell he says it is, because he has supreme and absolute control over the organization. He's a dictator. And so that's what I come down. It's whatever he says it is. And he doesn't have to believe or practice it on a given day, but he can inflict it on you. If you're an SP and he decides to send a team of PIs after you to make your life a living hell, he can do that because he's defending the religion. If you sue him in court for harassment, invasion of privacy, stalking, he'll say, I'm a religious leader. Other people did it. I have deniability. So when you ask that question, it's a lot more complex. Mm-hmm. He plays it to his absolute advantage, and it feeds his raging, out of control narcissism. So that's my answer.
Well, we've got 2 more questions, and we're running out of time. So
okay.
Take me to these last 2. This has been so educational. Anyone needs to play this back and listen to this again, because there's a lot here, and we definitely have to do more.
Okay, we'll close out the 2. Why Scientology is inherently self-destructive. And I've said this ever since I've been working. Scientology is inherently self-destructive because it's designed to destroy itself. It's trying to be too many things, but when you brutalize your own members, bankrupt them, take their children to Sea Org, when there are too many mysterious deaths, suicides, when you're always at lawsuits, and it's because of L Ron Hubbard's policies are inherently self-destructive. If you go to the Mormons have the LDS Church, Latter-day Saints, they have north of $150 billion in cash in Summit. And that's because they take 10% of your earnings over time, and it compounds, and people donate. That's real wealth, right? The LDS does a lot of things that are bad, and there's a movement of former members, but they don't brutalize people. They don't break up families. And so Scientology is just inherently self-destructive because it breaks up families by disconnection. It had the RPF, and it still has the RPF. It just calls it something else. It engaged in enforced abortions. It's doing everything contrary to human nature. So it is designed to be destructive, because you shouldn't destroy people's wealth. You shouldn't use child labor. It uses child labor. And its answer to child labor is we obey all applicable laws pertaining to child labor. It doesn't pay its Sea Org members anything. It brutally punishes them. Then when they leave and speak out, it fair games them. So that's self-destructive. It's insane self-destructive, because it's designed to be that way, and it can't get out of this circle. L Ron Hubbard's problem is he never had someone around saying, Ron, you shouldn't do that. You should not do that. That's crazy. That's insane. And that's Miscavige's problem. There's no board of directors, no one exercising oversight. There's this madman at the top. There was Hubbard, and then there was Miscavige. So when you have 70 years of madmen who are bent on revenge and destruction, you look at me wrong, I'm going to destroy you. That's self-destructive, and I'm going to bankrupt you on top of it. Now, the last question, how will Scientology end? I get asked this enough.
It's a good question.
Does it end in, I think the ending will be sudden and unexpected, based on criminal behavior. It will come out of nowhere. It will be asymmetrical and overwhelming. In other words, Scientology will not see it coming. It will be blindsided. It will involve criminality on a larger scale than most people realize. So I think it ends with RICO, basically.
Wow.
That's my prediction. And I have good reasons for saying that. And the deeper I get into the money, and I've been doing this now for 7 years, following the money. And what you find is there's crime attached to, there's dirty money. There's crime attached to it. And you get into South America where there's corruption, and you get into other parts of the world. So that's how I think it ends. And they're going to go down fighting, but probably the most stunning example, Derek, was just a foretaste of it, right? Do you remember when the anonymous video powered out?
Yes.
That took everyone by surprise, including those of us in the old guard. It's like nobody saw anonymous coming. They powered out of nowhere. They did this phenomenal video. This video was speaking to Scientology. And what Anonymous later said is, we run this. They said that to David Miscavige in Scientology and Office of Special Affairs, is you don't understand it. We run this. And Scientology never got what that meant. It still doesn't, that we run this. Meaning people out here who are free to speak, we run this. The governments run it. Law enforcement runs it. And you might think you're a law unto yourself with your religious protections, but at the end of the day, we non-Scientologists run this. And we're going to have the final say on how you end. And you're not going to know when the hammer drops. That's how I think it ends.
Interesting. Look, this has been, there's so much more that I know that you and I have to do. And of course, we're going to definitely talk more. I'm obviously talking with Mike Render. I'm talking to Ron Miscavige. I can't wait to speak with your wonderful wife. Yeah. And she's got a story too. It's more an emotional one, even though there's a lot, there's such an emotional trauma there. Everyone needs to go to this blog, check out his blog, go show him some love, drop some, comments down and share this out. Get this information out there. It's down in the description, ScientologyMoneyProject.com. And you want some deep stuff? I mean, you really want to get into some like dark web type material? This is going to expose a lot of the darkness that happens in Scientology. And her YouTube channel, his wife. You got to check her out. She's got a lot of wonderful videos here. Hit that subscribe button. Hit the bell. You guys can see some of the thumbnails. They speak 1,000 words. And you guys know, show me the money, baby. I mean, there's just so much, So go check them out. Show them some love. Tell us what you think down in the description of this conversation. 10 things that you must know about the cult of Scientology. Jeffrey Augustine, thank you so much for joining me, my friend.
Oh, Derek, thanks for having me. It was a pleasure. And you are a suppressive person indeed. And I'm very proud of you and the work you're doing.
You know it. Yes, sir. Thank you so much. And everyone who's watching, if you're an ex-Scientologist, let us know down in the description, or if you will, down in the comment section. Like this video, share this video out, every platform. Remember, anonymous, right? We're the ones. All right.
We run this.
We run this. And who are we? We are Myth Vision.